The night was heavy with silence, broken only by the crackle of fire in the Apache camp. Warriors gathered around, their faces stern, their eyes sharp, awaiting the command of their chief. And then, with a voice that carried both authority and finality, the chief spoke words that chilled everyone present. "You'll be their husband tonight." The order was not a suggestion, it was law. All eyes turned toward the stranger, a weary rancher who had wandered too far from the safety of his own land. Dust still clung to his boots, and the scars of a hard life showed in his weathered face. He had only come seeking peace, maybe a place to rest, but fate had handed him something else entirely. Before he could protest, strong hands shoved him toward the barn at the edge of the camp. The thick wooden doors groaned as they were forced open. Inside, 3 pairs of eyes glared back at him. 3 sisters, locked away like prized horses in a stall, fierce and untamed. The eldest, tall and sharp-eyed, stood like a shield in front of the other 2. Her jaw was set, her arms crossed, and her voice cut like steel. "We don't need a husband. Not you, not anyone." Beside her, the middle sister's spirit blazed like fire. Her hair wild, her stance ready for a fight, she added, "If you so much as take a step closer, stranger, you'll regret it." And then there was the youngest, the quiet one. She didn't shout, but her eyes spoke louder than words, wary, suspicious, but clever. She was already studying the man, measuring his every move, as if she could read the truth of his soul before he even spoke. The rancher froze. His hands raised, his voice calm but steady. "I didn't ask for this. I don't want to claim you. I only want to leave this place alive." But the sisters didn't believe him. Why should they? They had seen enough men try to control, to take, to break them. And now here was another, thrown into their prison by the order of their own chief. From outside, the voices of warriors echoed like thunder. The chief's words still rang in his ears. "Tonight they will be yours." The rancher knew one thing, whether he wanted it or not, his fate had been bound to these women. The barn door slammed shut behind him, the iron lock clicking into place. The scent of hay and dust filled the air, but beneath it was the electric tension of mistrust, anger, and fear. 3 sisters, 1 stranger, and a command that could destroy them all. The night had only just begun. The heavy barn doors rattled as the lock fell into place, sealing the rancher inside with the 3 sisters. For a moment, only the sound of his breathing and the restless snort of horses nearby filled the silence. Then, like a storm breaking loose, the eldest sister stepped forward. Her name was Maria. Her shoulders were square, her chin lifted high, and her eyes burned with the kind of fire only a woman forced to carry her family's burdens could know. She raised her hand palm out as if to draw a line in the dirt between them. "Don't mistake this for welcome," she said coldly. "You are here because the chief ordered it, not because we chose it. You will never be our husband." Her voice cracked like a whip, and her younger sisters stiffened behind her. The middle one, Rosa, wasted no time. Her temper was sharper than a blade, and her pride flared brighter than any fire. She stepped to Maria's side, fists clenched, her glare locked on the stranger. "Do you hear her, Cowboy?" Rosa spat the word as if it were poison. "You're not wanted here. You're nothing but another man thinking he can own us. Take 1 step closer, and I'll put that pitchfork through your chest." She gestured toward the rusty farming tool leaning against the wall. From the look in her eyes, the rancher knew it wasn't an empty threat. Behind them stood the youngest, Isabella. Barely more than a girl, but her silence was louder than her sister's fury. She studied him carefully, like a hawk circling prey. Her dark eyes narrowed, not with hatred, but with calculation. Unlike Maria and Rosa, she didn't rush to anger. Instead, she spoke with a quiet sharpness that sent a chill down his spine. "If you're smart, stranger, you'll sleep on the far side of this barn and keep your mouth shut. I'll know if you lie. And if you try anything, I'll scream loud enough for the warriors outside to cut you down where you stand." The rancher swallowed hard. 3 sisters, 3 fires burning in 3 very different ways. Maria's authority, Rosa's rage, Isabella's cunning. He raised his hands slowly, careful not to make a sudden move. His voice was calm, the drawl of a man who'd seen enough storms to know shouting never stopped the rain. "I don't want this any more than you do," he said. "I'm no man's dog to obey, and I sure ain't here to claim women who don't want me. So I came here hungry, nothing more. If you want me to keep my distance, I'll do just that. But I won't harm you." His words fell heavy into the air. Maria narrowed her eyes, searching his face for cracks, for deception. Rosa snorted, shaking her head, clearly unconvinced. Isabella tilted her head, still watching, still measuring. "You expect us to believe that?" Rosa hissed. "A man locked in here with 3 women, and you'll just sit quiet, respectful, huh?" "I've heard that lie before." The rancher met her glare steadily. "Then watch me. Watch every move I make. You'll see I'm no liar." The barn grew quiet again, but the tension never faded. Outside, the distant laughter of warriors drifted through the wooden walls. Men celebrating, mocking, already certain of what they thought was happening inside. The chief's command was final to them. In their eyes, the rancher and the sisters belonged to one another now. But inside, a war was brewing. Maria lowered her voice, speaking only loud enough for her sisters to hear. "We will not break. Do you hear me? No man will decide our fate. Not the chief, not this stranger. We stand together." Rosa smirked, fire flashing in her eyes. "Let him try. I'll claw his eyes out before I ever let him touch us." Isabella said nothing, but her silence was its own kind of defiance. She leaned back against the barn wall, her gaze never leaving the rancher, as though she was daring him to prove himself different from every other man she'd ever met. The rancher turned away, keeping his promise to stay distant. He sat down on the rough wooden floor, resting his back against the far wall. The barn smelled of dust, straw, and tension so thick it choked the air. He could feel their eyes still burning into him, could sense their distrust like daggers in the dark. He thought of the chief's words again, "You'll be their husband tonight." But as the hours crept on, one thing became painfully clear: he wasn't their husband. He was their prisoner, and if he wanted to survive the night, he would have to prove that he was nothing like the men they had learned to hate. The hours dragged on, each minute stretching longer than the last. The barn was cloaked in shadows, lit only by thin slivers of moonlight slipping through the cracks in the walls. Outside, the warriors laughed and sang around their fires, their voices carrying like echoes of doom. Inside, silence ruled, thick, sharp, and dangerous. The rancher sat apart from the sisters, his back against the cold wall. His hat lay on the ground beside him, and his weary eyes fixed on the floorboards. He hadn't asked for this fate, yet here he was, trapped, despised, and branded by a command he never wanted to obey. Maria, the eldest, paced like a restless wolf. Every so often, she threw him a glance as though daring him to stand, to try to prove her suspicions right. Rosa sat cross-legged, sharpening a small knife on a stone she had hidden in her dress. Each scrape of metal against stone echoed like a warning. And Isabella. She simply watched, quiet, calculating, her gaze unflinching. Finally, Maria's patience broke. "Why don't you speak, stranger? Are you planning, or are you just pretending to be harmless?" The rancher lifted his eyes, slow and steady. His voice came low, heavy with weariness. "What do you want me to say, ma'am? That I begged for this? That I wanted to be locked in a barn with 3 women I've never met, while a camp full of warriors waits outside to kill me if I disobey their chief? I'll tell you plain, I wanted none of this. I wanted a hot meal, a roof over my head, and maybe a night of peace. But peace ain't in the cards, is it?" His words hung in the air, raw and honest. Maria's jaw tightened, but she didn't respond. Rosa laughed bitterly. "Peace? Men like you don't bring peace. You bring chains, orders, and suffering. I've seen it too many times. My sisters have too." The rancher leaned forward, resting his forearms on his knees. His voice didn't rise, didn't harden, it stayed calm, almost gentle. "Then watch me, like I said before. I ain't here to chain nobody." "You think I want to be your jailer?" "No, I've had my freedom stolen before. I know the taste of it. I wouldn't wish it on another soul." That made Isabella tilt her head. She finally spoke, her voice soft but sharp. "Stolen? By who?" The rancher's eyes darkened. He hesitated, but something in her gaze told him she wasn't asking out of mockery. She was searching for truth. "By the same kind of men who sit out there," he said quietly, nodding toward the campfires outside. "Men who think power gives them the right to own others. I worked their land until my hands bled. I ate what little they threw my way. Slept in the dirt. I know what it feels like to be less than human." For the first time, the barn grew still. Even Rosa paused, her knife resting against her knee. Maria's eyes softened just slightly, though she quickly masked it. Isabella's gaze sharpened, as if trying to pierce through him to see if his words were true. "You expect us to believe you?" Maria asked at last. The rancher shrugged. "Believe what you want. I ain't got strength left to lie. You'll see soon enough what kind of man I am. When the chief pushes harder, when his warriors test me. Until then I'll stay here, quiet, out of your way." He leaned back against the wall, closing his eyes as if to shut the world out. But his heart was restless. His mind churned with questions. Why had the chief chosen him? Why force him into this cruel game? And most of all, what would happen to the sisters if he refused? Because deep inside he knew one truth. He could try to walk away, but the chief's command wasn't just about him. The sisters were pawns in a larger power. If he disobeyed, the punishment might not fall on his shoulders alone. It might fall on them. The thought gnawed at him, twisting like a knife in his gut. Meanwhile, Rosa broke the silence again, her voice dripping with contempt. "Don't think your sad stories make you different. Every man swears he's not like the rest. Every man claims to be honorable, until the moment he isn't. You'll show your true colors soon enough." The rancher didn't answer. He didn't rise to her bait. Instead, he let her words hang unanswered. Sometimes silence was stronger than any protest, but inside a battle raged. Should he fight the chief's will and risk death? Or play along, protect the sisters, and maybe lose himself in the process? As the night deepened, he realized this wasn't just their prison, it was his trial, and every move he made from here on would decide whether he left alive, or whether all of them would be broken by the chief's cruel command. The night wore on, heavy with tension. The barn had grown colder, shadows stretching long across the hay-strewn floor. The rancher sat still, his body stiff but his mind restless. Across from him, Maria finally sank to the ground, though her posture remained rigid, her eyes sharp as ever. Rosa leaned back, her knife still in hand, spinning it between her fingers like a silent threat. Isabella stayed quiet, her gaze shifting from her sisters to the stranger, as if trying to weigh which of them was more dangerous. Outside, the campfires were dying low, but whispers still carried on the wind. The laughter of warriors had faded into hushed tones, and the rancher's instincts prickled. Something was wrong, and he was right. Not all in the chief's camp agreed with his command. Among the shadows, a rival warrior crouched low, watching the barn with burning eyes. His name was Koa, younger than most, reckless and ambitious. He despised the chief's decision. In his mind, those sisters should belong to him, not handed over to some wandering rancher. His pride could not bear it. He tightened his grip on the blade at his side, whispering to himself, "If the chief won't give them to me, I'll take them myself." Back inside, the rancher rose to his feet, stretching the stiffness from his back. Immediately, Rosa snapped to attention, pointing the knife at him. "Sit down." No sudden moves, he raised his hands slowly. "Relax, just stretching these old bones. But listen." He paused, glancing toward the barn wall where the faint crunch of footsteps pressed against the dirt. "Do you hear that?" The sisters frowned. Maria tilted her head, listening. At first there was nothing. Then a soft scrape, the unmistakable sound of someone moving outside. Maria's eyes narrowed. There's probably one of the chief's men checking the doors, but Isabella shook her head. Her sharp ears caught what the others didn't, the hurried, uneven breaths of someone lurking too close. "No," she whispered. "This isn't the chief's guard. This is something else." The rancher's pulse quickened. He'd survived too many fights not to recognize the feeling of danger closing in. "We need to be ready," he said quietly. "Whoever's out there ain't coming to bring gifts." Before anyone could respond, the barn door rattled. The heavy iron lock clinked as rough hands tugged at it. The sisters froze, their eyes darting toward one another. Rosa tightened her grip on the knife, her knuckles white. Maria's voice trembled for the first time, though she forced it steady. They wouldn't dare, but they did. With a sudden crash, the wooden door shuddered as someone slammed against it. Hay and dust fell from the rafters above. A deep, snarling voice cursed from the other side. "Open up or I'll tear it down!" It was Koa. The sisters exchanged panicked glances. Maria stepped forward, shielding her younger sisters with her body. "Stay back," she hissed. The rancher stepped closer too, though he kept his distance from the women. His hand hovered near a broken pitchfork leaning against the wall. He met Maria's glare, his voice low but firm. "You don't trust me. I get that. But if that door comes down, you'll need me. Decide now, fight me or fight him." Maria's lips parted, torn between hatred and necessity. Rosa growled, "I'd rather fight you both." But Isabella's voice cut through, calm and sharp. "Maria, Rosa, look at him." She pointed toward the rancher. He's not reaching for us. He's reaching for the weapon. He's not the threat. The one outside is. Before the argument could continue, the lock gave way with a metallic snap. The door cracked open, moonlight spilling into the barn. Koa's shadow loomed in the gap, his knife gleaming. "There you are," he sneered. "3 sisters caged like wild mares, and a worthless rancher playing guard dog. Don't worry, I'll put him down quick." The rancher grabbed the pitchfork, gripping it tight. His voice was steady, steel in his tone. "You'll have to go through me first." Koa laughed, stepping inside, the barn creaking under his weight. "Gladly." The sisters huddled back, but their eyes locked on the rancher. For the first time, they weren't looking at him with hatred. They were watching to see if he could truly stand. Maria whispered fiercely to Rosa and Isabella, "Stay behind me. If he falls, we fight." But Rosa's hands trembled. She wasn't used to fear, and yet it crawled through her veins now. Isabella, though quiet, whispered back, "He won't fall, watch." Koa lunged, the blade flashing. The rancher swung the broken pitchfork, blocking the strike. Sparks flew as metal met metal. The impact rattled through his bones, but he held his ground. The sisters gasped. Koa snarled, pushing harder, his strength wild and furious. "You think you can take what's mine, outsider?" The rancher gritted his teeth. "They're not yours. They'll never be yours." The fight raged in the barn, every clash shaking the wooden beams. Hay scattered. Horses neighed in panic, and the sisters pressed against the wall. Watching with wide eyes, at last, with a desperate shove, the rancher drove the broken fork into Koa's shoulder, forcing him back. Koa roared in pain, stumbling toward the door. He spat on the ground, blood dripping from his arm. "This isn't over," he growled. "When the chief learns, you'll both hang." With that, he fled into the night, his footsteps pounding away. The barn fell silent again, except for the ragged breaths of those inside. The rancher dropped the weapon, his chest heaving, sweat glistening on his brow. The sisters stared at him, stunned. For the first time, Maria's voice was softer, almost uncertain. You saved us." Rosa lowered her knife, speechless. Isabella only nodded, her calculating eyes holding something new, respect. The rancher shook his head, sinking back against the wall. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because it was right. Believe me or don't, but you saw it with your own eyes." For the first time that night, the sisters' defiance wavered. The man they thought was their enemy had stood between them and true danger, and though none of them said it aloud, they all knew the war inside that barn had changed. The night outside the barn did not stay quiet for long. Koa's furious cries carried through the camp, and soon the chief's men stirred from their slumber. Flames from their dying campfires flared again as torches were lit. Shadows moved fast across the rancher's weary eyes, and the sisters huddled close, realizing the danger was far from over. Maria's voice was low. "Urgent. He's telling them lies. By dawn, they'll all be here for blood." Rosa's hands shook as she gripped her knife tighter. "Then we fight." The rancher wiped sweat from his brow, his chest still heaving from the brawl. "No," he muttered. "We survive. There's a difference." He pushed himself to his feet, scanning the barn. His gaze landed on farming tools, sacks of feed, and the heavy beams overhead. He pointed. "We can hold them off in here, at least long enough to get out." The sisters exchanged tense glances. For the first time, they didn't argue. A deep, rhythmic pounding echoed in the distance. Drums, war drums. The sound grew louder, joined by voices shouting, the sharp cracks of weapons striking shields. The ground itself seemed to tremble under the march. Isabella whispered, her voice trembling though her eyes stayed sharp. "They're coming." The barn door rattled once more, this time not from one man, but from many. Shadows clustered outside. Koa's furious voice rang out, "Inside! They're hiding inside! Tear it down!" Maria pulled her sisters close. The rancher stood before the door, gripping the broken pitchfork like it was forged steel. His jaw clenched, but his voice was steady. "Stay behind me." "No matter what," Rosa glared, her pride resisting. "Oh, you don't give orders." But Maria's hand on her arm silenced her. "He's right. For now, he's our shield." With a violent crash, the barn doors splintered as warriors slammed against them. The hinges groaned, wood cracking under their weight. The rancher braced a beam across the frame, shouting, "Help me!" Maria and Isabella rushed forward, pressing their shoulders against the wood. Together, they held as fists and weapons pounded from the other side. Rosa hesitated, then snarled and joined, her strength adding to theirs. The door shuddered but held barely. Dust fell from the rafters as the warriors outside roared with frustration. "They'll burn us out," the rancher muttered. His eyes darted to the hay piled in the corner. Too dry, too dangerous. If they lit torches, the barn would become a coffin, and then smoke. Thin, curling smoke snaked through the cracks. The acrid stench of burning pitch filled the air. The warriors outside weren't waiting. They were torching the barn. The sisters coughed, covering their mouths. Isabella cried out, "And they'll kill us all." The rancher's eyes blazed. "Not if we move first." He sprinted toward the back wall, kicking aside barrels. He spotted a small service door half buried behind crates. "Here, help me clear it." Maria and Rosa rushed to drag the crates aside, while Isabella pulled hay to smother the growing flames at the main door. The fire crackled, licking at the wood, but their frantic efforts slowed it. Finally, the path cleared. The rancher yanked at the small door, its rusty hinges shrieking in protest, before it burst open, spilling cold night air inside. "Go," he barked, but Maria shook her head fiercely. "Not without you." For the first time, his eyes softened. "I'll be right behind, move." The escape attempt. The sisters crawled through the narrow opening one by one, Maria shoving Rosa out first, then Isabella. Just as Maria turned to follow, the barn's main doors gave way with a thunderous crash. Warriors poured inside, their eyes wild, torches blazing. Koa led the charge, his wounded arm bound in cloth but his fury unbroken. His eyes locked on the rancher, murder burning in them. "There he is. Kill him." Maria froze, torn between escape and loyalty. The rancher met her eyes in that split second. "Go," he thundered. "Protect them." Maria hesitated, but obeyed, vanishing into the night with her sisters. The rancher turned, planting his feet. The barn blazed with firelight as warriors rushed him. He swung the pitchfork with raw strength, striking the first attacker across the chest, sending him sprawling into the flames. Another lunged, but the rancher ducked low, slamming his shoulder into the man's gut and throwing him aside. But they kept coming, 3 against 1. Then 4. The barn filled with the clash of weapons, the crackle of fire, the screams of men falling. The rancher fought like a cornered wolf, each strike desperate yet precise. His knuckles bled, his arms burned, but his will did not falter. Then Koa advanced, blade gleaming in the firelight. The men parted for him, their leader of rebellion. He sneered, his voice venom. "You should have run, rancher. Now I'll gut you in front of them all." The rancher, chest heaving, raised his broken weapon. His voice was ragged but unyielding. "Try." The two clashed, steel against steel, sparks flying. Koa was swift, fueled by rage, but the rancher fought with grim resolve. Every strike was for survival, every block fueled by the thought of the sisters escaping into the night. The fire roared higher, beams cracking, smoke choking the air. Both men fought as the barn collapsed around them. Maria, Rosa, and Isabella stumbled into the open air, coughing, their eyes wide as the barn behind them blazed like a torch in the dark. Warriors shouted, running toward the chaos, torn between saving their comrades and pursuing the sisters. Maria's chest tightened. Her eyes never left the flames. "He's still in there," she whispered. Isabella gripped her arm. "If he doesn't make it—" "No," Maria cut her off sharply. "He will." And as the flames devoured the barn, the sound of clashing steel still rang out within, defiant and unyielding. The night was lit like day, the barn consumed by roaring flames. Sparks shot into the dark sky, carried by the wind, while the sisters stood frozen a few yards away. Their chests rose and fell with ragged breaths, but their eyes refused to leave the inferno. Rosa's voice cracked, sharp with panic. "He's gone." "He's burned with them." Maria gripped her sister's arm so tightly it hurt. Her own throat felt raw, but her voice was fierce. "No, don't say that. He's stronger than fire. He's still fighting." Isabella's gaze narrowed on the collapsing roof beams. Her tone was calm, though her trembling hands betrayed her. "Even if he survived the warriors, the flames won't spare him." The 3 sisters stood in silence as the barn groaned and collapsed in a shower of sparks. The night filled with the sound of burning wood and the cries of warriors scattering. And then, movement. A figure burst from the flames, staggering through the smoke. His clothes were scorched, his skin streaked with ash, and his hands dripped blood. But his eyes still burned with life. The rancher had survived. The sisters gasped. Rosa clapped her hand over her mouth, tears springing unbidden to her eyes. Isabella's breath caught. Her calm mask shattered for the first time. Maria took a step forward, her heart hammering in her chest. The rancher stumbled, falling to one knee, coughing violently. But he forced himself up, dragging his battered body toward them. "You're safe," he rasped, before collapsing into the dirt. The sisters rushed to him, instinct overtaking mistrust. Maria knelt at his side, cradling his head in her lap, her hands trembling as she brushed soot from his face. "Stay with me," she whispered urgently. "Don't you dare leave now. Not after saving us." Rosa hovered close, her usual fire dimmed. She pressed a cloth to one of his wounds, muttering through clenched teeth. "Idiot. Reckless idiot. Fighting half the camp on your own." Her voice cracked. "But you did it for us." Isabella tore strips from her own dress, binding his bleeding arms with quick, precise movements. Her sharp eyes softened as she whispered, "No man would have risked that." "No man except you." The rancher's eyes fluttered open, weak but steady. His voice was hoarse. "Told you. I'd stand between you and harm." For the first time, Maria's fierce guard broke. Tears streaked her soot-covered cheeks as she bent low, her forehead touching his. "And you did. Against all odds, you did." They carried him to a sheltered hollow beyond the reach of the firelight. The night air was cool, stars watching silently overhead. Maria stayed by his side, wiping his brow, while Rosa and Isabella kept watch for pursuit. But the warriors did not come. The rebellion within the camp had sown chaos, scattering them. For now the night was theirs. The rancher stirred, groaning as pain jolted through his body. Maria pressed him back gently. "Don't move. You've done enough." He shook his head stubbornly, coughing. "Not enough. You three still aren't free." Rosa leaned close, her eyes glistening, though she tried to hide it. "Why? Why would you fight like that for us? You don't even know us. You could have run. You should have run." The rancher's gaze shifted among them, his voice steady despite the weakness in his body. "Because no one deserves chains. Not you, not anyone. I couldn't walk away. Not when I had the strength to fight." The words struck them harder than any blade. For so long they had believed men only saw them as possessions, trophies, or burdens. Yet here lay a man who risked everything, not for reward, not for pride, but simply because it was right. Isabella whispered, almost to herself, "He's not like the others." Maria's lips parted, her chest tight with emotions she could no longer deny. She took his hand, gripping it firmly. "You're not our jailer. You're not our enemy. You're the reason we're alive." The rancher blinked slowly, exhaustion threatening to claim him. "Then trust me. Just this once." And for the first time all three sisters nodded. A fragile truce turns to bond. The hours crawled toward dawn. The rancher drifted in and out of consciousness, but the sisters never left him. Rosa, usually brash and defiant, hummed softly to soothe him, surprising even herself. Isabella kept his wounds bound tight, tending with the care of a healer. And Maria held his hand as though it tethered him to life itself. In the quiet, their walls began to crumble. Rosa admitted, her voice low, "I thought you were just another man sent to break us. I was ready to cut your throat." The rancher, half-conscious, managed a weak smile. "Wouldn't be the first time a woman wanted me dead." Rosa actually laughed, a choked sound that turned into tears. Isabella spoke next, her tone softer than ever. "You didn't just fight. You gave us something I thought was gone. Hope." Maria leaned close, whispering so only he could hear. "And you gave me something more. A reason to believe again." The rancher's eyes opened, catching hers. He wanted to speak, but his strength failed. Still, Maria understood. She squeezed his hand tighter. As the first light of morning touched the horizon, the barn was nothing more than a smoking ruin. The chief's camp lay fractured, warriors divided, their unity broken by the chaos Koa had unleashed. But in the small hollow, 4 souls sat together, no longer enemies, no longer strangers. For the sisters, something had changed forever. Their mistrust had cracked, replaced by reluctant respect, then by something deeper, gratitude, admiration, and perhaps the stirrings of something they had never dared hope for. Maria whispered, watching the rising sun. "Maybe fate didn't lock us in that barn with a monster. Maybe it locked us in with the only man who could set us free." The rancher, barely conscious, smiled faintly. And for the first time since their capture, the sisters smiled too. The sun rose slow and golden, its light spilling across the broken plains, as if the land itself was ready to wash away the blood and smoke of the night. The barn lay in ruins, its blackened skeleton jutting into the sky like the bones of some long-dead beast. What once was a prison had burned to ashes, and out of those ashes a new bond had been forged, fragile yet unbreakable. The sisters sat close to the rancher in the quiet hollow where they had hidden him, their eyes weary but no longer cold. Maria's hands still held his, refusing to let go, while Rosa and Isabella kept watch with a silent devotion that had not been there before. The rancher stirred at last, opening his eyes to the gentle warmth of the morning sun. His body ached as if every bone had been set on fire, but when he turned his head, the sight of the three sisters watching him eased the weight pressing on his chest. For the first time since he had stepped into that barn, their gazes were not filled with defiance or suspicion. There was something else now, trust. He coughed, wincing, and tried to sit up, but Maria pressed him back down gently, her voice firm yet tender. "Don't move. You've done more than anyone could ask." Her tone carried no resistance. No sharp edge of mistrust, only gratitude. Rosa, who had once sworn she'd slit his throat if he so much as breathed too close, now leaned in and tightened the bandage on his arm. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "I thought no man would ever fight for us. I was wrong." The words seemed to sting her pride, yet also free her in some way. Isabella, quiet as always, lowered her gaze but spoke with certainty. "You didn't just save our lives. You saved something we thought was gone forever, our faith in goodness." The rancher managed a faint smile. His voice was ragged but steady. "You don't owe me anything. I didn't fight for thanks. I fought because it was right. Because you deserved better." His eyes flicked to Maria, holding her gaze for a heartbeat longer, and though his lips didn't form the words, the meaning was clear. He had fought for her most of all. The morning stretched on, but the danger had not vanished entirely. In the distance, the chief's camp was in turmoil, warriors divided after Koa's rebellion and the fire that had consumed half their supplies. Some called for vengeance, others for retreat. The sisters knew the land would not stay safe for long. Maria rose to her feet, scanning the horizon. "We can't stay here. They'll regroup, and when they do, they'll hunt us." Her tone was decisive, but for the first time, it wasn't just her sisters she looked to for agreement. It was him. The rancher struggled upright, his body protesting with every move, but his spirit refusing to bend. "Then we don't wait for them. We move. Find the ridgeline, follow the river." "I know the land. I'll get you out." His words carried the weight of a promise, one the sisters no longer doubted. Rosa placed a hand on his shoulder, steadying him, while Isabella handed him a canteen of water. Maria stood at his side, silent but resolute, as if ready to share whatever fate awaited him. They set out together, 4 figures against the vast sweep of the plains. At first their steps were slow, burdened by wounds and exhaustion, but as the sun climbed higher, their pace grew steadier. The sisters walked close to the rancher, no longer treating him as a stranger forced upon them, but as a companion who had earned his place at their side. The silence between them was no longer heavy. It was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. As the day wore on, they came upon a ridge overlooking the valley below. Smoke still rose from the ruins of the chief's camp, but it was distant now, powerless to touch them. The sisters paused, staring at the horizon stretching endlessly ahead. Rosa broke the silence first, her voice softer than ever. "What happens now? We've lost everything, home, family, even our names in the eyes of the tribe." Her words carried despair, but also a question. The rancher looked at them, his eyes steady though his body was worn. "You haven't lost everything. You still have each other, and if you'll allow it, you'll have me." He hesitated, unsure how his words would be received, but Maria stepped forward before doubt could take hold. She placed her hand over his heart, her voice quiet but certain. "You've already proven yourself more than any husband, more than any protector. You stood when no one else would. You've given us something worth carrying into tomorrow. We choose you." Rosa blinked at her sister's boldness, but then nodded slowly, her lips curving into the faintest smile. "For once, Maria speaks for me, too." Isabella's calm voice followed, unwavering. "And me." The rancher's throat tightened, emotion he could no longer hide burning in his chest. He looked at them, the fierce, untamed sisters who had once seen him as an enemy, and realized that in saving them, he had found something he never knew he was searching for. Not just survival, not just purpose, but family. The sun dipped lower, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. Together they descended the ridge, leaving behind the ashes of their past and stepping into the uncertainty of a shared future. The world was still dangerous, the road ahead unknown, but they walked it side by side, no longer captives or strangers. They were bound now by fire, by battle, and by choice, and as the wind carried away the last smoke of the ruined barn, Maria whispered words that echoed in all their hearts. "We were locked in with you as prisoners. We walk out with you as something more. From this day forward, whatever comes, we face it together." The rancher glanced at her, his weary smile brighter than the rising dawn. For the first time in years he felt whole. And for the three sisters, freedom had taken a shape they never imagined. Tall, scarred, unyielding, and theirs.